I do actually have Queen Victoria in my tree, and I'm kind of realizing that she's probably like better suited for this video than this thing. There we go. There's also Anne Boleyn over there, but yeah, she's gonna... I don't know. Anyway, welcome to my review of The Crown Season 6. I'm actually quite excited to be talking about it. I've kind of been able to sort of let it sink in what it was for like a full week now, and that means that I think that I'm quite capable of having, you know, a nuanced sort of opinion. I'm a certified The Crown fan. Like, I've been putting my face on the internet for the past 2 years now, and I've talked about The Crown a lot. I was even invited to the Crown premiere last year. If I'm honest, I'm quite relieved that I wasn't invited this year, because I remember last year kind of feeling like I couldn't really like be completely honest, because that would have sort of been rude. I mean, I can be rudely honest this time. I'm happy about that because it wasn't good. Honest, like I really want to be honest. I'm gonna try and make it as polite as possible. Like, I am aware that so many people work on The Crown and they do so with their whole heart and their whole soul. Also, I don't want to be negative towards the actors too much, because I do really feel like the actors did such a good job. My main #1 problem was with the writing, so that's kind of what I want to also discuss in this review. Now, it's all my opinion, everyone's allowed to disagree. I'm going to try and be as nice about it as I possibly can, so please also be as nice as possible to me and to each other. So let's take care of each other's karma, okay? I just kind of want to discuss like specific bits that I noticed instead of go through every single episode, because I feel like a lot of episodes were having the same sort of issue. Honestly, I feel like the #1 problem that this season of The Crown had was too much Diana. If that is possible, apparently it is. As amazing as Elizabeth Debicki is in this role, like, she's so good. It was a huge mistake to give her 4 full episodes, well, 3 full episodes, but then the 4th one was also heavily centered around Diana. Honestly, I feel like she should have probably died in the last episode of season 5. Peter Morgan obviously loves writing Diana, and I feel like he thought that that is what we wanted, when in reality, honestly, what I wanted more of was world events and like second-rate royals. The Crown used to be this TV show, this TV series that showed us world events through the eyes of this one family that represents the UK. Like, it really gave us a lot of UK history. At the center of that was the Queen, and I feel like as soon as Diana entered the chat, that completely changed, and that makes it totally feel like you're watching a completely different show. I don't want a different show. I want The Crown. And as soon as the Queen was no longer at the center of this show, the show sort of lost its core. Also, the structure was gone. So let's talk a little bit about the fact that the Queen was no longer the core, the center of the TV series, because there were a lot of events, core events of the Queen, that were completely missing in this season, but as well as in the last couple of seasons. So we got 3 episodes centered around Diana's last 8 years of life. In last season, we got a whole episode dedicated to the Al Fayed obsession with the British royal family, but they skipped over things like Princess Anne getting married, or the Queen becoming a grandmother for the first time. And despite the suffocating amounts of Diana, stories that we have seen before, they didn't show us Prince William's birth, which makes no sense to me. Like, that is an heir. That was an heir that is born. We got 1 shot of Princess Diana being a cranky pregnant lady, and that was it. Andrew's divorce was barely shown. Like, all of these scandals surrounding Andrew, as well as Fergie, we didn't get any of that, like snippets maybe, as well as the scandal around Princess Anne's divorce and Princess Anne's really bad marriage. And like, yeah, you might be saying, but I thought you wanted it to be about the Queen, but like, these are her children. That was like, you know, like dramatic experiences that the Queen was going through because her children were going through it, and she needed to clean up the mess. Like, remember how much screen time Princess Margaret got these first 2 seasons, rightfully, but then this last season there was zero screen time for the Queen's youngest son, Prince Edward. Like, I don't remember seeing him on screen. Like, if he did, he appeared to be an extra. Edward got married to Sophie in the time span that season 6 covers, and Sophie would become one of the Queen's closest confidants in her last couple of years, and they just didn't include it. Just a reminder, 3 episodes dedicated to Diana's last 8 weeks of life. 3. That said, the biggest victim of the, you know, the cuts that were made in storylines was probably Prince Philip. He didn't have a storyline, except maybe to try and sort of fix the relationship between Charles and William. I did like that storyline. It was nicely done, I guess, but that was it. And again, like, that relationship between Philip and the Queen, it really felt like the heart of the whole series in season 1 and season 2. It's like Peter Morgan sort of decided, like, well, their marriage woes are over, they're both settled into this, you know, into their marriage, we don't have to make episodes about it anymore. But where was that Philip who was told in episode 1 of season 1 that loving and supporting Elizabeth would be the ultimate act of patriotism or love? We got that god-awful episode with Penny where he basically tells the Queen, well, whoops, we kind of grew apart, this is my new girl now. When the Queen Mum dies, in like one of the episodes of season 6, someone makes this comment about how that was the last person dying who knew the real Elizabeth, and I'm like, her husband is going to live for at least another 20 years. And the Queen's mum's death was also really sort of felt like this sort of thing that they had to get over with. Like, she died age 102. Like, we could have had at least one scene where she was like, I'm going to see your dear papa again, or something of the sort. Like, this was a strength and stay. They could have made such beautiful parallels between Philip and Elizabeth, and when Charles and Camilla, for example, got married in that episode, but they didn't do that, of course. Like, the only thing we got of the Philip was this actor who for some reason always has like this sort of witty smile on his face. Like, I don't dislike him, but he's definitely my least favorite of the Philips. And the only thing he does is sort of make witty clapbacks that aren't funny. Yeah, it was not a worthy send-off for the character of Philip. Now, these are just a couple of family storylines that I missed, but even though they completely skipped over weddings and babies and divorces and I don't know, at the same time, I still feel like I got too much family drama and not enough world events. Like, how does that make sense? It's quite impressive until you realize that we got 3 episodes dedicated to Diana's last 8 weeks. If I have to say one thing that I dislike the most about the last couple of episodes is that it was too many family quarrels, too much family quarrels, all the family quarrels and not enough history. Perhaps that's because they moved too much into it now, but my mum is a really big fan of The Crown as well, and what she really liked about it was those world events such as Aberfan, but also for example, JFK. I think what was so good about those historic events was that a lot of them had like this impact on a lot of people where they were like, oh, I had no idea that ever happened. You know, like think of, for example, the Great London Smog in season 1. I had no idea that happened. It made for a really interesting episode. So in season 6, we do get snippets of 9/11, but we kind of get that through Princess Margaret listening to the radio, and there's literally this one scene of the Prime Minister telling the Queen about it, but it doesn't have really any kind of impact, even though like that was a huge historic event. How about the UK joining the EU? Like, why didn't we get any of that, basically? And obviously the whole British Empire just kept declining and declining, and that was kind of felt like a storyline that they dropped because they were like, you've had enough of the British Empire falling apart. Have some Diana. Like, so much was dropped, and instead we got a lot of stuff that was extremely uninteresting. In general, the timing of this season was just completely off. Like, I'm gonna say it again, I'm sorry, but 3 episodes of Diana's last 8 weeks, but we got 1 episode of multiple years during which Princess Margaret's health was declining. Like, are you not good enough writer to have that happen over the span of multiple episodes? Sort of like, or was that like, I guess it was a creative choice, but it was jarring. I really do like that we got these flashbacks with these younger actresses that were already in this series since season 1, by the way. That was such a fun choice, of Margaret and Elizabeth's night out in London on Victory Day. I like that, but at the same time, again, Margaret's death, same as her mother's, completely felt rushed and something that we had to get over with. stunningly acted, but it fell flat entirely, which is a huge shame considering how popular her character was. Timing was also quite often just inaccurate, especially when it revolved around the storylines of William and Kate, but I'll get to that later. Probably the weirdest timeline choice was the choice to switch William and Harry actors between episode 4 and episode 5. Episode 4 ends with them walking behind Diana's coffin, and we have these much younger looking actors, and then episode 5 opens up with this entire episode dedicated to Prince William's response to his mother's death. Like, we're told Diana died a couple of weeks ago and William's going back to school, but we get this actor who's probably literally in his 20s, it's a grown-up, it's a mature dude, and it makes it looked... That was so weird. Why? They could have used the same younger actor for that. Like, I've seen people joke about this online, like, this was Harry in, like, that one episode, and then this is Harry half a year later. What? I also feel like the timing and the choice of storyline was heavily influenced by what we now know, since Philip and the Queen have passed. With the first couple of seasons, I did not get the impression that had she been, you know, dead at the time, or had she died just before it released, that it would have had a lot of heavy influence on the choice of the storyline or on the writing in general. I did very strongly have that feeling this season. I mean, the choice to show us her coffin lying in Windsor Chapel in the last episode of last season, like, what was that choice? It was so on the nose. Same as Philip and the Queen's arrangements over their funeral being a storyline. I feel like they thought that would be sort of like a fun note for us. We'd be like, oh, I remember watching that like a year ago. And, you know, this might just be me, but again, I thought it was a little jarring because it kind of reminded me that I'm watching this TV series that is written by someone who also watched the Queen's funeral last year. And of course, her dying was inevitably going to affect the writing, but I didn't want it to be obvious, and it was. This gets me to my next point, cliche writing. I have read people complaining that Prince Charles was like too nice. Like, they didn't think it makes sense that he was being so nice. I don't actually agree with that. I do actually quite like the writing of Prince Charles in general. King Charles, I like that they showed him struggling with Diana's death and also struggling with being, you know, left the sole parent, like single parent, raising these two mourning boys. Like, I like the way that was portrayed, and I actually don't think that his selfish streak, which is, I guess, infamous, that it was completely gone. It was definitely still there, but this was still a father, you know, whose children just lost their mother. Like, I don't mind that they gave him that sympathetic storyline, you know. And that would make him the only character in season 6 that had proper layers, in fact. Like, Diana was so obviously, like, good-hearted. Look at her trying to do something about landmines and fly ring with William, and just be overall just being so goddamn nice to everyone, and such a, like, I don't know. I like Diana, but I'm sick of the constant portrayals of her being so perfect. If you're going to force Diana down my throat, at least give me a multi-layered Diana, and they didn't do that, obviously. Like, it's 2023, nearly 2024, can we please collectively finally agree that this woman was not a saint? Her version in The Crown has overall just been a huge disappointment to me. Now then, there was Camilla, who for one episode long was just constantly super understanding of Charles's struggles and was like, oh, please don't think of me, think of the boys. Literally, like, oh, the real me has been getting so much ridiculous hate that Peter Morgan is trying to force the really nice me down your throats now, and I don't know, again, too on the nose. As for Harry, people think I hate Harry. He's not my favourite, and he hasn't been for many years. But then I actually really do like to think that I always strive and aim to treat royals fairly. I mean, in my defense, I also got a death threat 2 weeks ago because I said that it's a complete embarrassment and that Kate should be completely ashamed of herself over the fact that she only worked 123 engagements this year. Just putting that out there to prove how disgustingly unbiased I am. And you know what? I think The Crown season 6 was unfair to Harry. Like, they were harsh, and honestly I didn't really expect that. Now, of course, Peter Morgan wasn't going to give him like a super likable portrayal, because I don't think Peter Morgan would have been able to live with himself if he would have gotten like the accusation. He's so nice about Harry because Harry also works for Netflix. But did they really have to put the swastika scandal in the last episode of the last season, and they didn't have to do a scene where William literally tells Harry,
"Don't ever do that. Compare yourself to her. It's not remotely the same. What she went through was far worse. And I get it, it's not easy having no responsibility and too much freedom, but don't you think I'd enjoy the freedom sometimes of not having to be the sensible one?"
Ow. And we also did not need a scene where Harry literally reminds William that William II
was assassinated by his brother.
William gets an entire episode of him greeting Harry, and Harry just sort of doesn't appear except to sort of make jokes. Like, Harry is the brother who gifts William condoms in front of their grandparents. Do I think that's inaccurate? Probably not. Probably very accurate. But at the same time, again, was it necessary to put that in The Crown? Ringing William up, asking how many girls he shagged at St. Andrews yet. We didn't get a multi-layered Harry, we got the stereotype Prince Harry. You know, and people have stereotypes for a reason. But they're still stereotypes. That said, Peter Morgan gave us a Harry who was very clearly, from a very early on age, unhappy with his position in life, with his position within the institution, with his position in comparison to William, and the two of them do bicker, and the two of them do have a lot of like tenseness going around. Like, William at one point literally tells Harry, like, will you just stop being so childish?
"I'm just trying to be an adult. Don't expect you to understand what that feels like."
And that is definitely, you know, the vibe that you get of their relationship. Not just coming from, you know, leaks and everything, but also very much from the book that Harry himself wrote. The dynamic between these two is something that will probably capture the imagination of a lot of upcoming movies and TV series and books that we will have to suffer in the next how many years? Forever, probably. So, I don't know, strap on your seatbelt, I guess. I do think that it probably failed because it's still ongoing, you know? William and Harry are still not talking. Their relationship is evolving as it is. Like, this is... yeah. Peter Morgan did definitely choose to not use Harry's book for gospel, though, which I find interesting. A good example of that was probably the swastika thing, where in The Crown, Kate warns Harry, like, just do cover up the swastika or something, and like William doesn't seem to have much of a problem with it, but in Spare, Harry kind of, you know, not blames them, but he writes that both William and Kate sort of thought it was like a brilliant idea, and they were like, oh, you should totally wear that, and we didn't get that version in The Crown. I'm an historian, so I would never claim that we should use autobiographical works as gospel, so I'm actually happy that he chose to go that route. Oh, and lastly, I know I said that I wasn't going to shit on actors too much, and I don't want to shit on the actor who portrayed Harry, but I will say that he looked nothing like him, he sounded nothing like him. At least William's actor really sounded like William, but he was a terrible casting choice, I think. The biggest victim, like real person victim of her portrayal was hands down though, Carol Middleton. And I mean that in a she should probably sue kind of way. Cringy, bad, cheap, weak, lazy choice to make her whatever they try to make of her. Plotting to get Kate, literally pimping out Kate to get sort of near William.
You still want to show off those legs?
It's our duty to make use of the assets God has given us.
Was so misogynistic. It was bordering conspiracy theory. I have seen people argue, but like, yeah, but there are a lot of sources who claim that this happened, or like a lot of people think that this is what happened, and I mean, yeah, there are also a lot of people who think Charles killed Diana, and The Crown season 6 made it abominantly clear that Charles did not kill Diana, with this whole scene where William sort of accuses Charles of being like somewhat guilty of Diana's death, and Charles nearly like sort of chokes crying, where he's like, that's so unkind, and he literally explains to us, which was such a creative choice on Peter Morgan's part here, he literally then starts explaining to William, as in to us, how he just can't have been responsible for that.
Your mother's death was a terrible tragedy caused by one irresponsible man drinking too much and then getting behind the wheel of a car and driving too fast to escape from photographers, which you and I both know she often encouraged.
But the fact that she was in Paris?
her choice.
With that man, those people?
Again, her choice.
Without any royal protection?
That was not my doing. I always said she needed police protection.
But she should never have been anywhere near the fire. She should have been safe with us, and the fact that she wasn't is your fault. And no, you didn't actually drive the car, but you drove her into the arms of those that did. By making her so unhappy. By loving someone else.
Well, I mean, if you want to make that connection, then that's your right, but I find it very upsetting and deeply unkind. My responsibility for Mummy ended a long time before she got to Paris. That accident was not in any way my fault.
But it's completely fine to then proceed to completely, be misogynistic in your portrayal of Carol Middleton and go the conspiracy theory route there. No. So William and Kate meeting at St. Andrews didn't even follow the basic outline of what we know happened. So let's talk about that. This season chose to show us inaccuracy in things that we know are inaccurate. So they didn't fill in gaps that, we don't know what happened. No, they literally showed us things that we know are not true. Season 1 and 2 could never. So let me give you a little bit of a rundown of William and Kate meeting, yeah? So it's true that they met at St. Andrews University in Scotland. Kate signed up for St. Andrews before knowing that William was going to go there. In the UK, there's a limited amount of universities that you can sign up to, and she chose to sign up to St. Andrews, and you know what? That is a really good university, so it's not like she was like making a really crappy choice or anything when she was choosing that. I would suggest that one of the reasons that she was probably choosing to go to St. Andrews was because her boyfriend was already there. Her boyfriend, Rupert Finch, who was a fourth-year law student. We do see him in The Crown, but we don't see that she dated him already when she arrived at St. Andrews. We see her dating Rupert because she wants to make William jealous, which, doesn't make any sense because now Kate and William ended up in the same dorms. When it comes to dorms, you cannot pick them. You cannot say, I want to be in that dorm. You can give preferences, so you can say I would like to have an all-female dorm or something of the sort, but then even then you can still be put in a dorm that you didn't was not necessarily your first choice. So them ending up in the same dorm was fate, I guess. Kate or William, there was one flaw between them too, they were close but not neighbors. They did end up in the same friend group quite quickly, but it took them at least a year to get involved romantically. As I mentioned, Kate already had a boyfriend and William eventually got himself a girlfriend. Her name was not Lola. I have no clue who Lola is supposed to be. Her name was Carly Bessie Burge. The whole character of Lola is made up, I think, and that whole scene where she and Kate sort of go heads to heads and have this cringy AF sort of, I don't know, cat fight over William because Kate was just literally, she's just chatting with William and Lola gets pissed. What woman would be that verbally aggressive to another woman just for speaking to her man? Only men could write that scene, honestly. I was so embarrassed for the writers and for the actresses having to play it out. I would have to suggest that never happened. If only because Lola doesn't exist. Now, according to sources, Carly was a little bit too much into William's social status and he got quite uncomfortable with that. Also, she was super comfortable with the spotlight and stuff, and I don't know, I think she probably gave William the ick or something, and so he broke up with her. And then Kate also broke up with Rupert, and the stars aligned. Now, Kate is shown in The Crown as being one of the prettier girls, and that seems to have been accurate. She was known at St. Andrews to be one of the most beautiful girls there, but she was also considered to be very shy, and we still know that Kate is definitely one of the more shy people within the royal family. Yeah, I guess the irony is that Kate and William kind of ended up liking each other because both of them just don't really like the spotlight. So that's good, that's great for them. People who went to university with them or knew them during their university days always describe how they would sit together in the corner and just chat together, and they sort of naturally tended to hang around each other because they had the same, I guess they had the same vibe. It was clear to everyone that they connected, but they didn't get together until after they moved into a flat with other friends. So in The Crown, we see that William sort of invites Kate to come live with him in this flat with him and his friends, but in reality these were their shared friends, and within their friend group they were let's go and find a flat together, let's move out of the dorms. And once they were living together, that seems to be when they hit it off. After which they decided to date for another decade, during which Kate was severely harassed and abused by the press. But that's like, you know, beyond the storyline, I guess. Like, one of the problematic aspects of Carol's scheming to get William and Kate to get together is the classism that is behind this conspiracy. William dating a commoner, like a middle-class girl, is something that a lot of people were not very happy with. Like, supposedly there were a lot of, like, more upper-class girls at St. Andrews who really felt like William should have dated them and not Kate. So even the idea that William only saw Kate as a potential love interest when she walked down, you know, in the sheer dress and in the fashion show thing is not really supported by any sources. Like, most sources close to William and Kate show us that they were already, like, really close friends before that. Like I said, like, Kate was already known as one of the prettier girls there. I'm sure, like, William would have, like, seen that as well. But that classism, that wasn't shown in The Crown at all. The Crown legit had Kate, daughter of multi-millionaires, work at an Italian restaurant. I guess we're back to the cringy writing part. That is what it all comes down to, you know? Like, I can sit here and talk about how amazing the acting was and how great the costumes were, although some of Kate's 2000 looks looked a little similar to her 2010 looks, but you know, the cinematography and all the money that was clearly pumped into this and the amazing music, like, it didn't make up for the awful writing. It just didn't. Like, Imelda Staunton did a really good job, and we got Claire Foy back to go back to that same old storyline that worked really well in season 1 and season 2, you know, around like her having to kill herself to become the Crown. Like, it really worked well back then, but it kind of felt repetitive now. Olivia Colman, I love her, but she never lived up to Claire Foy, so her, like, reappearance, it didn't have the same effect as Claire showing up. And I understand, like, the idea behind the ending, but as I mentioned, I really found the coffin just too much on the nose. I understand a majority of the creative choices, I think, but it just, none of them really did it for me. Same with Diana's ghost. Let's talk about Diana's ghost for a second. Like, I understood it, and I honestly didn't hate the choice as much as most people did, to be honest. But then Ghost Diana goes and tells Charles,
"Thank you for how you were in the hospital. So raw, broken, and handsome."
Only a man could ever write a woman saying that after she just died. Like, what do you think the real Diana would have actually wanted to say to Charles, you know, right after she died? And I'm not suggesting here that I think Diana would have actually, like, screamed at him or something. I think that if Diana had gotten the chance to talk to Charles one more time before, you know, she'd be gone forever, would be, please take care of our sons. Make sure that they stick together. Remind them of how much I love them every single day, and make sure that they don't forget about me. Talk about me to them, please. Even, like, Charles, I hope you become happy. I want that for you. Would have worked better than,
"Thank you for how you were in the hospital."
what the effing fuck? Like, I can ramble on about this forever, I'm sure. Like, I probably missed some things now I think about it. Like, things that will come up in my head, being like, oh, I wish I included that in the review. But I do think I got, like, the main points here. And the number one point is just the cliche and the lazy writing. That was just really not good. I will say that I probably actually prefer season 6 over season 5, and that has one main reason, and that is that it was entertaining. Like, even if it was bad and I was cringing and sometimes even a little frustrated, well, very frustrated, at least I was constantly entertained. With season 5, that was just not the case, which is crazy because that was depicting, like, a crazy time for the royal family, and they made it boring. Like, I understand the need to maybe give a voice to the Al Fayed sort of side of things, but I actually don't understand that because that's like a side story. Like, how can you give us a whole episode dedicated to Al Fayed and then just ignore the fact that, for example, I'm just, top of my head, Princess Anne's first husband had an illegitimate child while still married to her. Like, Princess Anne's first husband impregnated another woman while still married to Princess Anne. And that was not included. Like, that would have been such a fun storyline. Like, I think a lot of people don't know that. And, like, I think the Queen knew about it and lived through it. Like, anyway, I'm tired. I'm done. You know, I will miss the show. Looking forward to the show. But I'm not sat sappy or sad that it's over, and I think a lot of people agree with me. But do let me know how you feel. Again, please be nice about it. It's just a show. I think a lot of people sometimes need that reminder that, you know, like, it's the royals. We're not talking about like serious world events going on right now here. Like, you know, we don't have to act like the other person is sort of threatening your existence just because they like Meghan or don't like Meghan. Like, it's not that, actually it's not that deep, you know. Most of the time it's not that deep. It's so good to live your life constantly reminding yourself it's not that deep.